Hello, Thunder Wizards. So today I want to talk to you about what it really means to have pride in your ancestry. I mean, this can be pride about anything, but in this case, we're going to talk about having pride in your ancestry. What does that really mean? And this is in response to a comment that was left on my last video. My last video was actually about Christianity and how destructive Christianity was. During that, I went on a rant, as I do. I went off on a tangent and spontaneously went on a rant talking about my ancestors, who were the Germanic tribes people. And the point that I was trying to make, which I didn't elucidate as clearly as I wanted, was that the modern problems that we have, which include racism, terrorism, global warming, pick whatever you think the problem is, the political issues that we have, genocide of other races, the destruction of the Native American peoples, slavery, whatever it is. Sorry. My point about all of that was that this is a continuation of a victimized mindset that happened to my ancestors, between 1,000 and 2,000 years ago. And the point I was trying to make is that to not understand how we ourselves were conquered, victimized, and racially oppressed way back then. If we don't understand that, then we won't understand that modern racism is an overcompensation. It's a direct response out of our own wound. And so I went on and I talked about how ironic it is that now the people who represent the racist mentality, right? So around the world, if people want to talk about the white devil and they want to talk about white people this and how the white culture this and, they're destroying this. And I'm in full agreement, by the way. I'm in full agreement. We can't deny the fact that white people came over here and destroyed. I mean, there was a whole Holocaust of Native Americans. Just first off, with our disease, we brought disease and wiped them out, and then we took over their country and wiped them out and decimated them. If you don't understand that that's a fact, then there's something really missing in your mindset. And I made a point about, the most racist expression that we have in modern time was the Nazi German. Nazi Germany, the Holocaust of the Jews and the Poles and the everything else that they did. And I was saying that it's no coincidence that that happened in Germany, because it was the Germanic tribes people 2,000 years ago who were the ones who were the minority, who were oppressed, who were treated like non-humans, who were enslaved. And then later on, in the Middle Ages, in order to survive and become part of the civilized world, they had to willingly destroy their own spiritual heritage. And it's no coincidence that the people who are the most intolerant are the fundamentalist Christians. And fundamentalist Christianity came out of Germany with Luther. Luther started that. And it is a direct response. What I'm saying is that whole movement is a direct response to the cultural and racial wounding that happened during the Roman conquest, both militarily and economically and religiously, of Europe. And until we can acknowledge that within ourselves, we're going to continue to create it. Because people who are oppressed, in order to survive, they overcompensate. And they become worse oppressors than those who oppress them. And we see this here. I see it in cultures here in this country, who either were brought over here as slaves and or who, indigenous people. You see them overcompensating in really destructive ways. And it's a result of their own wounding. It's a result of them trying to overcompensate for the unconscious, slave mentality and victim mentality. And what I'm pointing out is that white people still have this. The whole need for white people to feel superior, those that do, white supremacy, is coming from an unconscious need to overcompensate for their feelings of insecurity and inferiority. And that feeling of inferiority and insecurity has its roots way back 2,000 years ago. And again, I find it really ironic. The most primitive of people in the world at that time are now the people who represent the highest of elites. I find that very ironic and interesting. But they are still operating, their need to dominate and control and to colonize and to enslave, all of that came from their own racial wounding. It's an overcompensation. And so I want to share with you, because I want to respond to Robin Pruitt's comment to me. Now, I assume that if you leave a comment on my channel publicly, it's because you want to have a discussion. If you don't want me to respond to your comment, then don't publicly leave a comment. Because if it merits a good discussion, I'm going to use it. So, Robin, if you don't want me to talk about your comment, then don't leave one. But I'm assuming you do want to have a discussion and that you are willing to look at yourself honestly and ruthlessly as a warrior. I'm assuming that. So she responds and she says, the Germanic people were not the first, all caps, to colonize. Colonization was done to others by others first and then done to the Germanics. And then the Germanics adopted those ways and continued the ways that was forced upon them. So she's repeating what I already said, but she didn't get it because she's feeling the need to defend, because she feels that either what I'm saying is an attack or that it's feeding into other people's attacks. So she's not getting, she's got the first part, but the realization hasn't gone deep enough to create a change within her to actually heal the racial wounding that she's responding from, which is 1,000, 2,000 years old. So the first part of what she says is what I said. But then she goes on to say, the Germanics were used for their, quote, barbaric, unquote, ways, which is what I already said. Also, Germanics are not the ones holding the power today. And here's where we split. Right there, all she has to say is that, and I already know that she's operating from a victim mentality. I already know that she feels that other people have power over her. As a white person, she feels oppressed. I can already see it. I don't even have to read the rest, but the rest of it will also tell me that. The Germanics are not the ones holding the power today. If they were, anti-white nonsense would not be allowed. So now she reveals that what she would do is she would not allow people to have the free speech to say whatever they want to say. Which again, if you have to control other people, you're not secure in yourself. This is a sign of real insecurity. And, if you're here to say that you're proud of your heritage, then you don't need to control others. Let me stop right there because, the whole thing about white supremacy, and I'm not saying that Robin is a white supremacist. She's getting close to it, and it wouldn't surprise me if there was some racial problems, bias within her mindset. I don't know yet. She hasn't revealed it, but definitely the symptoms are there that this is somebody I can imagine talking about how, the blacks have taken away our jobs and the Mexicans are coming in and taking away our jobs. And, she hasn't said that, but I can feel it. She would be one that could go in that direction very quickly based on what I just read. I could be wrong. But let me talk about that for a second. If you are somebody who believes that your whiteness makes you superior, and if you believe that other cultures and other races are a threat to your job, to your culture, to your country, to your religion, I submit to you that you don't see that you are superior, that you are actually unconsciously feeling inferior. Because, how is it that you can be simultaneously superior to other people and yet at the same time be threatened by them? How is it that somebody can take your jobs away from you? Right? How can you be both superior and inferior at the same time? If you really are that superior, then nobody's going to have the power to take your job away, take your country away, and you're not going to have to defend it. If you really are superior, then you're going to be able to allow other people to come in and do what they want. But since they're inferior, they're never going to take over your country anyway. But if you're afraid that somebody's going to take away your job and your country and your religion, then you don't feel superior. You feel inferior. And what you are projecting onto them is your own inferiority. Do you not see that? Whenever you say that this person, for whatever reason, is inferior to you, do you not see that that is your own projection onto them? Look, again, I just find it really ironic. Some of the people who are the most staunchly conservative, who are, Americans for Americans, nationalist, who don't want government in their life, who think that the government is out to oppress them. I find this in the coal miners. And they talk about that. They don't tread on me and don't take my guns away and give me freedom. And at the same time, if you don't let them work for some big giant coal company, then there are no jobs. And then other people, and then they'll start talking about, other people and these races doing this to them. It's like, okay, so now you can't get a job as a coal miner. So get another job. There are no jobs where you live, so move. I don't understand that concept. I don't work for anybody. I'm not, I created my own business. I'm responsible for creating my own business and my own life. I don't want to work for somebody else. And I started with nothing. I had nothing. I had less than nothing. So you're not gonna get any sympathy from me crying and complaining about how those people are taking away our jobs, and especially when you haven't even bothered to go get yourself educated. There's a reason for that. I mean, education is a really wonderful thing. Really. And it's one thing to choose not to go get educated. That's how you want to live your life. I'm okay with that. You want to go, when I was growing up, you had two options. You could either go to a trade school and become like a mechanic or an electrician or a plumber, or you could go to college. Those were the two choices that you had. And so if you're taking the trade route, and you want to go learn a trade and spend your life doing that, I'm okay with that. But then don't turn around and badmouth other people who actually choose to go get educated, choose to go learn something. So I'll tell you, education will help you understand something. When I was in college first time around, I spent 8 years in college. I only got a BA after all of it because I changed majors and everything. But I went there to get educated. And I first went in to become a Christian minister, which is why I know so much about Christianity. And then I ended up changing my major to humanities classics because I realized I wasn't learning what I wanted to learn. Humanities classics, by the way, used to be what people went to college for, like the colleges that were built in the United States way back in the 1700s and all that. The basic was humanities classics. That's where you started from. And what is humanities? It is art, literature, philosophy, history. Classics is classical languages like Greek and Latin. And so I was hungry for history. This is, and my education built my ability to create my business, because my business is built upon my knowledge. My knowledge is, yeah, my intuitive knowledge, my spiritual experience, but it's also backed by a lot of education in language, in history, philosophy, critical thinking, all that stuff I got in college. So for those of you who want to sit there and badmouth college because you feel stupid, because let's face it, that's what it is. You feel inferior, so you want to talk about those stupid, those educated people, because you feel inferior, you feel stupid. You don't have to. I'm not saying you are. I'm saying that's how you feel. Otherwise, you wouldn't badmouth people who actually put time and effort to learn things. But it was a really eye-opening experience, because I remember being in the library, and I remember reading first-hand accounts of settlers coming from England to the New World. And I remember becoming so enraged about what I read, so absolutely fully enraged. And what I remember reading was, again, this is a first-hand account of somebody that's coming over from England. They're on the boat. I don't know when it was, 1690 or something like that. And they haven't even got off the boat yet. And this guy is talking about looking over the bow of the ship and seeing in the forest. Imagine he's coming up on this, this pristine forested landscape. And he is talking about himself in the first person as being a child of Israel, the children of Israel, and they are coming to the promised land, and he's already planning to drive out the Canaanite heathens. He doesn't even know who the hell he is. He is completely identified with the false mythology that the Hebrews used for themselves when they created their new history, after the Babylonian captivity. By the way, that whole Old Testament is complete. It's a total myth. It was the Hebrew people destroying their pagan past and creating a new myth for themselves. It was self-hatred. And here's this guy, this Anglo-Saxon guy, descended from Germanic pagans who were themselves once racially and spiritually and economically and culturally oppressed and all that. And he's carrying that wound so much that he's identified with some other false mythology from a completely different culture. And he's coming in seeing himself as, sent by God to drive out the evil heathens. Before they even get off the boat, this guy has pulled out his gun and he's shooting at these natives who are peering through the trees, scared out of their life, going, what the hell is going on here? Who are these people? These people, this is their home. And here comes this invader. The guys haven't even got off the ship and they're shooting at them. They didn't even bother to get out of the ship and say, hi, we're here. Hey, let's have a powwow and we'd like to live here. And can we be your friends? No, before they get off the ship, they've decided they got to wipe out these indigenous people, take their land away. This is the mindset that came with the settlers of the New World. And the point I'm trying to make, and the point I was trying to make in the last video, is that this comes from a racial wounding that happened 2,000 years ago. Now, my friend Robin here gets the first part right, but she hasn't understood that she is operating from her own racial wound. Because if she did, she wouldn't then say later on, she says, I will always defend my people and my heritage, always. Even if her people and her heritage have done horrible things. Instead of looking at why that happened and how that's affecting her, she's going to just, with a reaction, just jump to their defense and say things like, the Germanic people were not the first to colonize. Other people did it to them first, and then they did it, as though that's a justification. That's not a justification. That's sad. And, look, I am perfectly capable to sit here and say to you that I am extremely proud of my heritage, especially when I continue to research what my tribal ancestors, my primitive tribal ancestors, the way that they believed, their love of nature, their spiritual practices. I love that they didn't build cities. I love that they still lived in the old ways, that they lived in concert with nature to the extent that they didn't chop down the forests and drain the swamps. They left nature exactly as it was and lived in it. I love that about them. I love the ethos of the warrior, that the warrior lives to his vow and will die before breaking his vow. I love that. And I love that we still have this in us, that we still worship the Christmas tree, which is the tree of life. I still love that we have Easter. I love that we have the word weird, W-Y-R-D, the shamanic Germanic concept of the web of weird, the life force energy that weaves around all of life and creates destiny, that we still have that in our language. I love that. So I'm very proud of my heritage. In fact, I am so proud of my heritage that I want to heal the racial wounding that happened to them 2,000 years ago. In order to do that, I have to acknowledge the racial wounding that my people have done as a result of them overcompensating for the unhealed wound within them. Because that's it, that's what it is. It's very sad. My friend Robin here has not gone deep enough in herself, in my opinion, to see that within herself. Let's just go on with what she says. She says, also, the Germanics are not the ones holding the power today. She feels like a victim. If they were, anti-white nonsense would not be allowed. In other words, she would tell people, you can't talk like that. That's not a sign of feeling secure in yourself. To find out whom controls you, that's not accurate. To find out who controls you. To find out who controls you, find out who you cannot criticize. Who said you can't criticize anybody? You obviously can, because you are. What you can't do is you can't judge people superficially for things that you feel judged about. You can't judge people based on well, you can. But I mean, when you judge people simply because of their color of their skin, their ethnic background, their religion, their culture, when you judge people superficially like that, yeah, people are going to respond negatively. You're not criticizing what needs to be criticized. You're responding out of a victim mentality, and you're superficially judging people in order to protect your own insecurity. Well, it's been pretty clear who, not whom, it's been pretty clear who the one group that you cannot criticize without punishment is, and it most certainly is not white people, especially not the Germans. In other words, she feels that Germanic people have been unfairly pointed out. Well, here's the thing. Sometimes, like when I go off on Christianity and I criticize Christianity, a lot of people with the same kind of mindset want to jump in and say that, well, why don't you say something about Islam? And it's like, dude, you're missing the whole point here. You're missing the whole point. Is that a person who really truly is comfortable within themselves and really truly is proud of who they are is also strong enough to look at themselves ruthlessly. And I am willing and happy to look at the mistakes of my ancestors. They're my ancestors. So I have the right to talk about them. I mean, anybody has the right to criticize, the faults of other people, but I especially have the right to criticize my own people, right? If I go along with your mindset there. So to blindly defend your people always for any reason when you're not willing to take a look, and if you really care about your people, then you are going to want to heal the wounds within them. That's not what you're doing here. You feel victimized and criticized, and you feel disenfranchised, and that is not pride. That is not pride in yourself. It's coming from insecurity. Let's talk about Islam for a second. So let's talk about the guys who do. When they come onto my channel and they say, why are you going off on Christianity? Islam is far worse. Well, number one, I'm not Islamic. And that's not my background. I want to police my own people. I want to do my part to heal my own people. I'm not afraid to criticize, obviously, I'm not afraid to criticize anybody for any reason. But let me take it a step further. Here's something that when 9/11 came around, I pissed off a lot of people because I said, you have no idea what has spawned this. You can go off and get angry with them. They're horrible people, and they did a horrible, absolutely reprehensible thing. But you have no idea what truly caused it. And I'm not talking about the 9/11 truthers. I mean, I hold Osama bin Laden directly responsible for what he did. But he's coming from his own racial and ethnic and religious wounds. He is just the pimple on that boil. He was just the representation of what was already there in that culture. And get ready to get pissed off, because here it comes. Islam is the child of Christianity. Christianity is the steroid child of Judaism. But Islam is the child of Christianity. There would be no Islam. I'll say it again. There would be no Islam if it weren't for Catholicism. Because what you may not know about Muhammad did not start out seeking to have jihad against Christians and Jews. He didn't start out that way. He really liked Christianity. He worshiped Mary and Jesus. He was really into Mary and Jesus. And for whatever reason, he didn't feel connected to that culturally, so he wanted to create a monotheist religion for his people, the Arabs. And Mecca had been a holy place for the polytheist Arabic people. And I think there was a god for every day of the year. I think it was a calendar. And there was a god for every day of the year. And you went around like they do now. They walked around. They did the same thing back then, but it was worshiping the gods of the year. And what Muhammad did is he went and he wanted to destroy that. He wanted to become monotheist because he admired the Roman Empire. And the Roman Empire, the Catholic Roman Empire, had romanticized Judaism. And so Judaism and they're both Semitic people, the Jews and the Arabs. They're both Semitic people. They speak almost the same language. They're ethnically related. They're like brothers. They hate each other, but it's a family rivalry. Ethnically, they're almost identical. The Hebrew language and the Arabic language is very similar. And they come from the same root. Do you realize this? And so Muhammad, he wanted to be part of the Roman Empire. And his way of doing that was that he was going to transform his primitive polytheist religion and turn it into a monotheist religion. And he wanted to be part of what was then a duality, the Jews and the Christians. Because even though the Christians racially were oppressing the Jews, they romanticized the Jewish mythology and religion. And so Muhammad wanted to be part of that. So he created his old mythology, and I don't know enough about, go beyond that, but he wanted to change his mythology into one of a monotheist one. So he had his own experience with Allah, which was the Arabic pronunciation of Elohim. He wanted to have his experience of Allah, and after doing that and writing down whatever his revelation was, he went to the Christians. And he said, look, I've had my experience with the one true God. I want to be part of your thing. And the Christians said, no, you can't, go away. That's not a worthwhile religion. Get out of here. He went to the Jews and he said, look, brothers, I've had this experience with Elohim, Allah, and blah, 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 blah. And they said, no, get out of here. You don't know what you're talking about. That's a fake religion. He went back and felt minimized. He felt oppressed. He felt rejected, and he got resentful. And it was from that moment on that he created the jihad against the unbelievers. He was angry. And as you know now, the thing about the Arabic culture is pride. And if you treat them with disrespect, they get so angry they chop your fucking head off. It's coming from insecurity. So for those of you that want to bag on the Islamic religion, what you don't understand is that they are simply responding to the Christian monotheist religion. And had we been polytheist, there probably would have been no need for Islam to rise in order to try and be part of the civilized world. That's all Islam was an attempt to be part of the civilized monotheist club. And when Muhammad got his feelings hurt, which again, the whole Arabic people had already probably felt that way. And if you know anything about history, especially going up through World War I, the way that the Western world, used and stole from the Arabic culture, then you understand where their anger comes from, and all of the the stuff going on with the Christians going down there during the Crusades and all the crap that happened from you have to understand. You can't understand if you're judging somebody. You have to get into their mindset and understand where they're coming from. Having said that, jihadism and Muslim extremism is as bad as anything on the planet. I'm not trying to justify it. I hope you can see that. But I'm saying you've got to understand your part in creating that. You've got to understand that. People don't get pissed off for no reason. Doesn't mean that they're right, doesn't mean that they're justified. There's always an interconnection. And until you get mature enough to be able to look at your part, you will not grow spiritually. And the bottom line here is that I don't know Robin, but Robin is obviously, from what I can see, operating from a victim mentality. If she isn't racist or racialist, she's definitely on the verge of becoming that because she feels oppressed. What she doesn't understand is that she gets the first part, that the Germanic tribes people were racially and militarily and culturally and economically oppressed and damaged. All the things that we did to other people were done to us first. That part is true. What she doesn't get is that wound needs to be healed. Otherwise, we continue to create it and justify it. And justify it by saying, well, they did it first. Well, they did it to us first, so now we're going to do it. And again, I just want to say, you can't be superior and inferior at the same time. You can't sit there and say that I'm white and I'm superior and those other minorities are taking my jobs away. You can't do that in the same, because if you're truly superior, then let them have the jobs. I can create my own. Really, I mean, that's how I feel. I can create my own. I don't need to work for somebody else. If you can't say that, you don't have the right to point at somebody else and say that you're superior to them. It means that you're a wimp. It means that you're a pussy. It means that you're not smart enough. You're not strong enough. You're not committed enough. You're not resourceful enough to rise above and take charge of your life. So you got to pick one. If you want to be a victim, go ahead and be a victim. If you want to be superior, the way that you show you're superior is that you understand people, you acknowledge them, you can see where they're coming from, and you can see yourself in them. And if you can't do that, then you're not superior. You're inferior. Okay, so that's my rant for today. I don't know, maybe I'll post this, maybe I won't. All right, we'll talk to you guys later.